Friends, I am going to record chapters 54 and 55. Share my screen. Chapter 54, Friday, May 1st, 1778, and this is from a journal of Private George Ewing, 2nd New Jersey Regiment, Valley Forge. This evening, we had the agreeable news that the courts of France and Spain had declared these United States free and independent. The kiss ended much too soon because a heavy fist pounded the front door with such violence that my first thought was that the British were attacking. I hurried down the hall and threw open the door just as General Greene and Bellingham appeared at the top of the stairs, both wearing their nightshirts, the general carrying his sword. Mr. John Lawrence swept by me. "France," he shouted. "Vive la France!" "What is this?" asked General Greene. "A rider just arrived from York with the official news from the Congress. Louis XVI of France has formally recognized our United States as an independent nation. The French have joined in alliance. They will fight the British alongside us." Lawrence broke off from his story and danced a jig in the middle of the hall. Congressman Reed joined the commotion, and all three men ran down the stairs, cheering and thumping one another on the back. "This changes everything," exclaimed Reed. "The king must have pissed his drawers when he heard," said Bellingham. General Greene laughed and tried to dance his own clumsy jig. "There's more," Lawrence said. "Our spies have brought the news that the king's replacement for Howe has landed." "Who is it?" asked General Greene. "Henry Clinton. There's no telling what orders he brings. His Excellency would like all of you to join him at headquarters as soon as possible. He has summoned a council of war. A few more congressmen are riding to join us today." Bellingham seized the moment. "Curzon, ready the horses. Isabel, help the cook prepare something we can eat in the saddle." War was heading for us at a gallop. This was almost as important as the fact that Isabel came back, and she kissed me. Chapter 55, Friday, May 1st, Wednesday, May 6th, 1778. This is from the Marquis de Lafayette in a letter to his wife, Adrienne. "The welfare of America is intimately bound up with the happiness of humanity. She is going to become a cherished and safe refuge of virtue, of good character, of tolerance, of equality, and of a peaceful liberty." The hours and days flew after we learned that France had joined our side in the war. Even more men crowded into Moore Hall to conduct the business of the quartermaster's office and the commissary department. Before General Washington could lead the army against the British, General Greene had to make sure all the soldiers had shoes. General Biddle took over the parlor for his sleeping quarters and duties as forage master. Two more assistants to General Greene moved in, and the Moore family was displaced so their chamber could be turned into an accessory office. The daily presence of so many junior commissary officers and ink-stained clerks kept Mrs. Cook and Isabel busy to distraction. The overwork led to a lowering of standards. One night, Mr. Bellingham instructed me to complain to Mrs. Cook about his less than clean plate and soggy bread. When I reported this to the kitchen, the old woman grew very red in the face and told Isabel to fetch her a clean apron. Once the apron was properly pinned, she smoothed her hair and walked into the dining room without knocking. "The girl and the boy and me are doing the work of 10 folk and cannot do the work of 11. Any gentleman not satisfied with the condition of the crockery or the taste of his grub is welcome to pitch in and help. Are there any complaints about the pudding?" The gentlemen all spooned up their marrow pudding, tasted it, and pronounced it wonderful. "That's as it should be," Mrs. Cook said. His Excellency General Washington decreed that the camp should celebrate the French alliance in high style with a banquet for the officers and a demonstration of marching and a day of leisure for the soldiers. Isabel thought we should plan to flee during the celebration, but I knew we'd have to serve at the banquet. "But when, Curzon?" she asked. When indeed? When should we run? Would Ebenezer still help? How to get word to him? Which direction should we take? And every time I looked at Isabel, how would we remove that horror from her neck? She had already tried every key she could find in a broken fork to no avail. If I had access to a forge and a short bit of iron rod, I could try to hammer out the proper key shape, but only after days of work and a generous helping of good luck. The only comfort I took that week was that Bellingham was as fatigued and overworked as we were. The dark circles under his eyes made him look as if he'd been thrashed in a tavern fight. It seemed no matter how many papers he read and letters he wrote and columns of figures he added, there was more work to be done. It was a delight to behold. The night before the grand festivity, Bellingham worked late into the night, and I with him. He'd given me leave to polish General Green's sword and the uniform buttons in the dining room so he would not have to shout and wake the household to get coffee or more cake. He opened another letter from the pile on the table and leaned closer to the candle to read it. When was the last time you saw Gideon? I did not look up. The day he left, when he was so sick. I could feel his eyes on me, but I kept to my task. Did he die? He's run away from York. The congressman is rather stunned that Gideon would betray his trust and is seeking news of his whereabouts. Did you know of this? I rubbed the sword's blade clean. To tell of Gideon's spying would put Isabel and me in danger. No, sir, I said. Gideon didn't much like me. We never talked. The grandfather clock struck 2 of the morning before Bellingham could answer. The lateness of the hour caught him unawares. Is that time correct? He asked. Yes, sir. He rubbed his eyes and then stretched his neck to both sides. I was going to wash up before bed, wanting to look my best for form today. Will you tell Isabel to start heating water for me as soon as she wakes? If I may, sir, said I, ever the perfect manservant, I have bathing water ready now. The kitchen is quiet and private at this hour. If you can bear a few more minutes of wakefulness, you'll be fresh and clean on the morrow. That is a brilliant notion, Curzon. Thank you, sir. I'll spare you the details of Bellingham's disrobing. Assisting with a bath has long been serving folks' least favorite duty after chamber pot cleaning. Once he'd removed every stitch of clothing and the cord around his neck that held the key to Isabel's collar and folded himself into the soaking tub in front of the fire, I handed him a block of soap and a cloth for scrubbing, and I laid his clothing neatly on the back of a chair. Shall I set up the screen, sir, in case anyone wanders through to use the privy? Thank you, Curzon. I'm so tired I would not have thought of it until too late. I murmured a polite noise while I set up the wooden screen. Bellingham rubbed the soap on his hands, rubbed his hands together, then squeezed his eyes shut and scrubbed his face. A cool breeze came through the open window, causing the candles to sputter. I shut the window before he could tell me to do so. The candles on the kitchen table had burned down to guttering islands of soft wax lakes and did not have much more light to give. If I may, sir, I need to fetch new candles from the pantry. These stubs won't last long. Bellingham soaped his neck. Do what you must. I stepped to the other side of the privacy screen and picked up one of the candles. A thin stream of wax spilled over the base and puddled on the table. When I was little, I used to amuse myself by sticking buttons and forks into soft wax and then showing the impressions they made to my father. A chill shook me, as if I'd not closed that window. I was standing an arm's length away from Key to Isabel's collar. I glanced cautiously around the screen. Bellingham had lifted a foot out of the water to wash it. I quietly stole the key from the top of his folded clothes and pressed it into the wax, then said a prayer and lifted it carefully and checked to make sure that no wax was stuck to the metal. As Bellingham splashed water on his face to rinse away the soap, I returned the key to where he'd last seen it. By the time he called for a towel, the plate that contained the wax impression had been hidden in the larder, and I was putting out new candles so that he did not trip in the darkness. Hey, Curzon, that was brilliant. Okay, we will chat tomorrow about these 2 chapters. Make good jots, and thanks for listening.